Hey folks, Studio here. So today we're going to be talking about Pantheon, Karthus, mid lane, one more time. If you did not watch the last daily number 50, we covered Pantheon and Karthus in the mid lane and covered what goes well. So a quick recap would be Pantheon pressured mid quite a bit early, got a lot of early support for that mid lane. It was even things such as, for example, Nuna would run by, blood boil him, and Pantheon could apply more pressure. They got into lots of very small skirmishes, 3-on-3s, 2-on-2s, good situations for Pantheon to either ult in and clean up, or when he ults in, it just shifts in his favor quickly. So, things went well for him. Let's look at how things can go badly, though. So, we are now in game. Believe me, this is not the first time I've done this. I actually forgot to go in game a couple times. But the Pantheon we're looking at is going to be played by Angeloid, and his team is underrated. So, it's Sayes on Ezreal, Pounce on Aurelia, Prophet on Sona, and Admiral Azingi on Amumu. They're up against TSM, which is going to be Odd One on Shyvana, Dyrus on Yorick, X Special on Soraka, Reginald on Karthus, and Chaox on Corki. Now, to look at what goes wrong, we're going to look at Reginald quite a bit. He's going to be one of the big focuses. So Reggie, what do you do differently from Jinte, the last Karthus we saw? The Angeloid did a very good job really kind of beating in line with support. So one big difference, Reggie does not have cloth armor, 5 potions like Jinte started with. He does have a lot of armor, he doesn't have any real AP. He actually has HP per 5 quintessences. If you look at his HP regen per 5, 14 is a lot for level 1 and Karthus. So he's sacrificing some of his early game in terms of quintessences and runes and masteries, but not like Jinte did. Jinte sacrificed an item slot. He got cloth armor, 5 potions. You don't do anything with that cloth armor as Karthus. That cloth armor is cloth armor. You're not going to build it into anything else. Aegis is not exactly a good Karthus item. You're not going to build Wriggles. So they build nothing with that cloth armor. Jinte just could not use it. Reginald, he's looking at the late game. And the problem Pantheon has against somebody like Karthus specifically is that if Angeloid on Pantheon is not ahead of Karthus significantly, if at the 20-minute mark, at the 30-minute mark, he isn't either ahead himself or his team as a whole is farther ahead than TSM, they're in a bad spot. They can't go even. And this is a very specific matchup. This is going to be what a lot of early game characters have problems with. For example, LeBlanc, same kind of deal. LeBlanc, if she's equal with somebody at the 40-minute mark, is usually in a really bad spot. She needs to get ahead. She needs to get ahead quickly. Generally, they both benefit in the same situations, which is very, very early game team fights. So LeBlanc, you want to get into 2-on-2s with 3-on-3s, 1-on-1s. Pantheon, same deal. Now, Reggie, I don't know if you're watching, he just took blue buff and wolves with Dyrus. So why is that what they did? He's going to push like crazy. And this is how he keeps himself safe at level 1. Watch his CS. He's not going to get all that much CS actually. He does miss some, just coming into the lane late. But what he's going to focus on is spamming Lay Waste almost off cooldown nonstop. The reason for this is because if he spams Lay Waste, he can push in early. Angeloid, he's trying to pressure with his Spear Shot, but Spear Shot level 1 isn't that effective. It's only 70 damage, which is actually a lot, but he has health potions. Reginald is just going to burn through a couple of them. And it's okay. Now, Arch is actually very scared to engage. Reginald does have Defile, and he does have a lot of Lay Waste he can spam. So if Angeloid does go for a fight, if you're watching the replay yesterday against Jinte, well, Pantheon can't actually all-in Karthus very well, just because Lay Waste damage combined with the exhaust, combined with Wall of Pain, is going to be too much, and Angeloid would die unless he has a very significant advantage going into that fight. Now Reggie, he's just going to keep spamming blue buff. Just watch that timer on blue buff. It will not end for quite some time, and he will keep pressuring, he will keep pushing. Things to note, he's safe to push relatively because he has this ward over here. So he's hanging on the right side. He knows that this is a safe area. As long as he stays around this ward, he should be okay. For example, Azingi comes for this gank, but guess what? Reggie's fine. Reggie could have actually waited there a bit longer. He might have had a blow flash, but he would have been safe. That is the point. Like, they will sacrifice some of their early game. They won't have the good ward coverage bottom because they know mid lane is going to be the focus. They know Angeloid wants to kill that guy. And Azingi, unfortunately, Amumu is not the best ganker, especially Amumu starting cloth armor, because you don't have the mobility. His initiation is actually very good if he can land it. You know, if he lands Bandage Toss, it'll probably be a kill, but he has to land it, and if he doesn't, he's kind of worthless. He'll slow people with a red buff, but that's it. So Reggie thinks about going back, but he's got a plan in mind. Looking at his goal, he's at 644. He can't buy really any complete item. He can't buy any GP5s, and that's what he's going to go for. He's going to go for a GP5, partially because he wants to make up for a bit of the CS he missed early on, but two, if he gets a Heart of Gold, that's a lot more damage Angeloid has to deal to burst through him. He can still go for Rod of Ages, he can still go for the normal Karthus items, but that one Heart of Gold will A, help him in the late game and the mid game, as just a cruise gold. You know, he can sell it or even build it into something like a Randuin's Omen, which is not likely, but it's a possibility. And B, you know, it's going to make him strong in the early game. So Heart of Gold, an incredibly effective item, especially when you factor in the extra armor runes Reginald currently has on Karthus. So Angeloid, what's he been doing, really? He's been trying to pressure, but the creep wave is so large, the lay waste are so constant, he can't really go for high pressure without the creep wave turning on him a bit. Like, there you go, he takes a couple shots from the range minions, but imagine if he took a full volley from 5 to 6 range minions. They do a decent chunk of damage. Right now they're doing 25 damage. It is actually very heavily reduced, probably going to be about 12. But still, imagine one volley from 3 range minions, 36 damage, and it comes often. Reginald finally went back to buy, though. What did he pick up? Heart of Gold, boots, 2 potions. I'm going to check one thing really quickly. Okay, cool. He's got that item build because he wants to, well, survive. They don't care about the early game. That is important to remember. Their team is specifically designed for late game, and they actually have a very solid mid game. But the idea is, Yorick, he's been 1v2ing. Can he fall behind? Yes, it's okay if he falls behind. Pantheon, he's actually up in the mid lane. Can he fall behind? Not really. Karthus can actually stay equal with him. Now Angeloid actually goes for a kill up here. We saw Darius before. Didn't really have any mana. Doesn't have his flash up. Angeloid goes for that kill. Does he pick it up? Does he pick it up? No. Actually, Darius had a cloth armor, and that cloth armor was just enough to save him. Now, this is actually a very big deal, because look at mid lane, what has Reginald done in response? The blue buff isn't quite up yet, so he's still using his own mana. But he's pushed a turret, he has a GP5, he's now ahead in CS. If you're watching CS before, he was actually about equal. So, Angeloid, they do take top turret very quickly, but they're losing CS. Very importantly, they're losing CS on the all-important Karthus mid lane. Karthus is getting ahead. And this cannot happen. This is not what happened against Gente. Gente fell behind very quickly because of the very high jungle pressure. Unfortunately, Azingi as a Mumu could not apply it, especially with a good ward coverage coming out from TSM. So now mid lane, Karthus he's only ahead 8 CS, which is not a massive number, but he has a second chance to buy. He has another Ruby Crystal. He's coming to lane with a Heart of Gold and a Ruby Crystal, which is, you know, put him at 1200 HP. Angeloid, what does he have? 1000. So Karthus is now tankier than Pantheon, which is kind of scary for Angeloid. He knows he can't fight him one-on-one. He knows that what's Reginald going to do? Well, blue buff is going to respawn, which it has already. He's going to pick it up, and he's just going to push and farm. And what's it going to do? It's going to make it very boring for us to watch him. So we'll stop watching him because, frankly, it's not exciting. But he's going to push. He's going to farm Angeloid. What's he going to try and do? Well, he can poke every now and then. He's not going to commit unless he sees a kill and knows that he's not going to die to an auto-one gank, for example. But he's more or less in a bad spot now. If he does play consciously and doesn't really go aggressive, guess what? Karthus is going to free farm, and he has a good chance of falling behind. If he doesn't play aggressively, if he does play aggressively, he has a very high chance of dying because Karthus is very effective at killing him. Just because the wall of pain comes down, Angeloid will get a lot of DPS out, yes, but he has to stand still for Heartseeker Strike. He'll take a lot of damage from Lay Waste, and there's a good chance Reginald will kill him even if he dies because of the ultimate. So Angeloid, what's he going to do? Well, he's going to pressure other lanes, and this is an important thing to do when you're someone like Pantheon. TSM, though, they're set up so that if he pressures the other lanes, mid lane gets farther and farther ahead. And then here comes decision making. What do you do? Well, Pantheon's a special case. He has his ultimate. Normally, what you would want to do as a mid laner is push out really hard, push to this turret. That way you can ultimate to another lane, and gank can be awesome. Cool. Because he's Pantheon, Pantheon doesn't have very good pushing power. He has decent auto attack. He has okay clear with Heartseeker, but it's going to be 2 Heartseeker strikes. And what's Reginald going to do in response? Push super duper hard. just completely murder creep waves as quickly as he can, spamming lay waste almost non-stop. And because of that, words Archer Angeloid almost all the time at this turret. And at this turret, okay, he can CS decently. He did miss a CS there, but he'll get the majority of the CS in the lane just because he's Pantheon. He has high attack damage. But, you know, Karthus can take Wraiths, and more importantly, Karthus isn't getting pressured, and he can't pressure other lanes without sacrificing CS. They know this on TSM. Actually, it's beneficial for them to goad out Pantheon to get him to go to a different lane if they can survive it, just because, guess what? They sacrifice a lot. So Archer Angeloid is no longer in vision of TSM. And TSM, they play very differently as a result. So Prophet's over here, he does have his flash up, Syas is in the back, but with Angeloid out of vision, Chaos, you know, will now stay closer to this part of the lane, closer to the bottom. X Special's not going to try and be aggressive at all. Like, they retreat and they play very defensively. This is what they need to do. Like, you know, the lane's pushing out. Do they really push out that much? Not really. They see Angeloid in the mid lane. What do they do in response? They start being aggressive. And this wastes Pantheon's time. This wastes his ability to pressure, his ability to harass. If they have a good idea of where he is, which he was actually in this spot right here, a great spot to ult from, if you waste his time, it's an awesome way to be offensive. And actually, look at how well they plan on this. So Reginald actually going for a steal on Wraiths, as Odd1 is going bottom for a gank. Pantheon, what's he going to do as a response? He's not able to pressure Karthus, so more farm going to Karthus, but he's going to go ahead and actually ult down there, as this big creep wave is just going to get melted and Karthus got extra CS. So, slow motion fight. Let's actually rewind because the very beginning of that fight did not happen. The score right now is 3-3. It's important to remember that. So, bottom lane's being aggressive as Zingi's come down for the gank. Chaos does not have cleanse up, which is very important, as Zingi does have his ultimate up. So Chaos walks right to the bush, gets ulted. Syas is being super aggressive, actually ultimates on X Special, and Karthus comes out. So Syas is actually about to get blown up by Karthus, tries to pick up Chaos in response. Does not, so now it's one death for underrated. Pantheon ult comes down, and Pounce is actually teleported from the top lane. So Chaos gets picked off with that last Transcendent Blade, and now Odd1, he's in a pretty god-awful position. But they actually don't go for him. He has oracles, so it would be a good kill, but they decide Dragon's the next target. So how many kills went out there? 2 for 1 in favor of underrated. Important to remember though, Karthus got a decent chunk of farm mid, got about 10 more creeps mid lane, so the kills weren't worth all that much in favor of underrated. This dragon would be a huge thing, but actually, Reginald with absolutely no mana, Dyrus and the odd one go to stop him. This is a really weird play from TSM. So Reggie is actually briefly focused, but really shouldn't be. You know, shows up, throws the wall, gets out. Odd1 himself actually gets picked off, but they do pick off a Zingi, and Dyrus with his ghost helps pick off Pounce. So it's 2 for 2, and this is the best they could have hoped for, because the dragon is delayed, it's a trade. So in the end, it was 4 kills for 3 kills in favor of underrated. Now, why is that not that good? Because normally that's awesome. Normally it's just like, oh, we got a 1 kill. Cool, we didn't get dragon, but whatever. We're ahead of kill. We came up quite a bit farther in gold. Well, Karthus pushed the crap out of mid, like crazy. A really user teleport, which isn't going to be up for 5 minutes. Essentially, they pushed for that fight down there. And as a result, Karthus is now ahead 33 CS. He gained about a 20 CS lead in that exchange. They did pick off an Oracles, that I think is the big part of that fight. Odd1 lost his Oracles, lost his pink eye. But Reginald is now super duper scary, super duper farmed, dramatically ahead of Pantheon, despite the fact that he did really well that fight. Well, only 500 gold. But essentially, TSM didn't lose anything. And underrated had to use a lot of resources, most importantly that teleport and a lot of flashes to get those kills. While TSM, they kind of walked in there and, well, Karthus farmed, uses ultimate, and didn't lose any ground despite such a big play coming out from underrated. And that's where it gets scary, especially because underrated, they're behind in gold overall. And a lot of that gold is going to be onto Karthus, onto Corki, onto, well, not Soraka, and Shyvana actually has quite a bit too. So they do pick up a kill in the bot lane though, and it's important to remember that even is not that good for underrated. Think of any early game specific character, like I said, LeBlanc Pantheon were good examples. Garen is another good example, old Garen at least. Old Garen used to have a big problem where you get to mid and late game. I do not know if new Garen has a problem, by the way, so don't confirm it. I will not confirm it. But he would reach it, and he would get in team fights and not do anything. So you'd have all this farm, but it wouldn't really matter because, alright, he'd press his buttons. What does Garen do, though? Nothing. Now, Angeloid, like I said, the focus was on map pressure. So top lane, Dyrus was in a kind of weak spot. Pounce started a fight. Angeloid followed up. They didn't get the kill. And this is scary once again because what happens? Karthus gets farther and farther ahead in CS. And this is, I think, one of those moments of desperation, especially for someone like Angeloid. He knows how good TSM was with Karthus. He knows Original will most likely be able to just carry team fights almost on his own. Just be like the rest of his team will essentially be bags of damage, not necessarily even high bags of damage, but just some damage, and Karthus will finish them off. Angeloid knows this, so he's going for the high pressure, he's going for these ganks, but every time a gank isn't successful, he loses more CS, Karthus gets farther and farther ahead, and Pantheon cannot be behind. Especially when you look at their team. Alright, Corki, he's actually behind on Ezreal right now. Well, he's ahead in CS, Ezreal catches up later, my bad. So Ezreal is behind right now, Pantheon's behind. Who's really ahead? Oh, nobody. Nobody underrated is really in a good spot right now. And that's where you have to be kind of cautious. Like, alright, Aurelia has more kills, but Dyrus has more CS. And it kind of balances out. Aurelia might have more gold overall, actually is a bit behind. So, underrated, they're falling behind. And they're a team that they do not have the same, well, team fight. Like, people say you can have early game characters that are good early game as long as you have characters that are good late game. The problem with going against a team like Karthus, or a champion like Karthus, is you don't need someone who's good early game, you need someone who's great late game. And alright, the AD carry is going to be awesome, sure. You know, Sayas, if he gets his farm, will be amazing, because Ezreal is a good AD carry. Corki will match that, though. And very importantly, Reginald will outdo Pantheon, he'll outdo Aurelia, while I'm backed up by Yorick. Both Corki and Karthus will just be too much. Also, Soraka is awesome against Pantheon because of the armor buff. Holy crap, Pantheon does some damage against that. Angeloid, though, let's look at his item build. He has Merc Treads, which is completely different than what he got against Jinte. He took forever to upgrade his boots. I don't actually know if he did by the end of the game, but he needed that early defensive option. At this point in the game, Angeloid already had Brutalizer and Last Whisper, so a lot is sacrificed. And as you can see, he's actually kind of learned from his roaming potential. He hasn't roamed quite as much since he missed that gank onto Dyrus. He's getting cautious now, which is both a good thing because, you know, now he won't miss any CS mid, a bad thing because he's not going to make the big plays that his team needs to make. They do pick up Dragon, but lose mid turret as a response. And that's kind of the problem that Underrated is having. They're not really getting ahead. They're keeping equal. And TSM, they're A-okay with that. Alright, stay equal with us. We'll just keep farming. Original will get all the CS. He's up to 151 versus Pantheon's 100. And guess what? You know, if Original gets all the CS, we'll win fights just because it's Karthus versus a team that's relatively far behind. And unfortunately for Angeloid, he's now in a spot where he has no chance of pressuring Karthus. So Karthus has a Rod of Ages. It's actually not maxed out. It has 0 points in it. It was just recently bought. But still, Lay Waste will do about, let's see, 300 damage, 270 actually, or 290 to be more accurate. So those will come out every second or so. And Pantheon only has 1500 HP. He does have a decent chunk of magic resist. But Karthus, with how tanky he is, and the wall and the Defile, will get those Lay Wastes off. And Angeloid will most likely die if he alls in. Like before it was a maybe, now it's pretty much an all. So he goes for the big plays now. Now this is a different situation. He's looking for the engagement coming in from Azigi. He's going to help set up his team set up a fight. But he thinks that with Reginald in the mid lane, and this turret already down, the only thing Reggie can really get is farm. And because of how pushed in, or how much he has to push in to get that farm, Angeloid thinks that somebody, possibly Pounce, possibly himself, possibly even Sayas, will pick up the farm that reaches this turret. It's important to remember that with this turret gone, that sucks, but hey, it means that this big creep wave, when it builds up, will take a long time to reach over here. So that is the thinking with this fight, which makes this fight a lot more sensible. So let's go ahead, look how it comes in. As he's looking for, you know, that opening, the ultimate comes in from Pantheon. Chaos actually gets punted out of the air. Flashes at the last second. Can he get out? The answer is yes. And that's the unfortunate part. TSM, though, they actually go in for this fight again. And it's scary that they do. Like, why would you do that? Especially, why would you walk up to Pantheon? But Darius top lane is doing well against Pounce, who actually, there's a ward in this push, so Pounce will still take aggression in there. And Reginald, he can either push in or go for this fight bottom. So X Special, you know, he's getting beat up quite a bit. The ultimate comes out. Reginald picks up a kill. They do pick up Porky. They do pick up X Special. And then, you know, it's the Alwyn versus Angeloid. Will he get the kill? Will he get the kill? Alwyn gets the kill. So they come out, you know, 3 kills or 2 kills. Top lane, actually Pounce chasing down Dyrus. He tried to teleport, but in the meantime, Dyrus did so much damage, Pounce actually had a flash and tried to get away. And so, really, what did they gain from that fight? They gained 1 kill. But they're not getting objectives. Top lane's now being pressured by Dyrus. Might actually kill it. Mid lane's being super pressured by Reginald. And all the CS that they lost in those laning situations means that they really didn't gain that much. Alright, they got a kill, they got 600 gold for the team, and actually, well, they didn't because X Special's on a death spree, so Corky's also hasn't gotten any kills, so they got very little out of it, and TSM knows this. This is how TSM is playing. Dyrus, they know he can farm top lane, he can beat up Aurelia when she goes for that teleport, which is why that ward is in there, by the way, a very good ward. And of course, Reginald, well, he just keeps farming, actually picks up kills with his ultimate, and gets even farther ahead of Pantheon in the end because he picks up so much CS. So, it's important to remember that when you get kills, kills are not necessarily always equal. In this case, TSM didn't get as many kills in a fight, but they came out ahead because the deaths were not worth as much, and in the meantime, creeps died, objectives got pushed. Top turret didn't go down in the end, but now it's going to go down very quickly. So TSM, they're ahead in gold, and it will not be hard for them to pick up a little bit more gold. Now, what does Underrated do? What is their plan? What can they do? What can they do? I don't know. They have to keep going for big plays, and as you can see, TSM, every time that they go for a big play, they see Underrated, like, they see their plan. TSM's like, you're going to go gank bot, we're going to push top, we're going to push mid, we're going to be aggressive somewhere else, we're going to make it so that, alright, you might close that gold gap a little bit, but we're going to stay equal, we're going to stay in our dominant position, because dominant is even for us. And you can see that right now, Karthus has 201 CS, he's got 7,500 gold, the next closest in the game is actually Shyvana and Yorick at 6,200, actually no, Ezreal at 6,500. So he's over 1,200 gold ahead of the next person on the enemy team. And alright, they're picking kills up on Darius. It's actually a very important kill because he's worth gold. But Reginald, you know, he's farming and farming and farming. He's got 2,400 gold to spend. He can get 2 parts of the death cap. And it's just, the game is going longer and longer in favor of TSM. And this is a good way to play a Karthus. Completely just make it through the early game. It's not even just, you know, kill early game, dominate early game. No, just survive the early game, get a lot of CS, get a lot of gold. Don't even make big plays. Just use your ultimate every now and then. And guess what? You can get a lot done. You can come out ahead even. They do take down this mid turret though on Underrated, and they actually take the gold lead. But it's a small gold lead. It's only 600 gold. So when casters, for example, I'm just going to talk about us for a sec. When we usually go into the, man, this team is so far behind, the numbers I've heard is if a team is not within 10% of another team, they're in a bad spot if they're 10% behind. So like, let's say a team has 27,000 gold versus a team has like 31,000, that 27,000 gold team's in a bad spot. That's usually the case. And the language will change. It'll go from, man, TSM, they're going to make a big play, to TSM, they have to make this big play to come back in. Underrated, they're a tiny bit ahead, yes, but a very insignificant amount. And once again, who has that gold? Karthus has that gold. Ezreal does have a decent chunk of gold, yes, and is ahead by about 700. But really what it comes down to is Karthus is ahead of everybody else by over at least 1,000. And he is the big scary character. AD carries are always scary because of how well they scale. Yes, that is the truth. But Karthus is extra scary because he's just this extra little factor that Underrated doesn't have. It's almost like they're going to play a 4v5 or a 6v5 in the later fights because Reginald will just be doing so much more damage that Pantheon can't compete with. So Dragon is being attempted by Underrated. This is a smart little skirmish coming in from them. They have Pantheon, who's going to be able to come in from the side. But this is, I think, the most telling moment for the position Underrated is in. Look what the damage Prophet takes. Takes a rocket, takes a lay waste, takes a tiny bit of poke, ghouls and such. One lay waste takes him relatively low. The ghoul is actually doing quite a bit of damage just with those ghoul auto attacks. A rocket hits, a lay waste hits. Prophet now has 340 HP. Reggie presses R. And that was a span of about a couple seconds, by the way, when that was live. At that point, TSM picked up Dragon because they lost their Sona, they lost their ultimate. And this is the point of the game where you have to ask yourself as Underrated and go, can we actually maintain this? We saw what they did to Sona. Yeah, Sona's relatively squishy. Still has, actually no MR, so Sona's very squishy. Can they actually maintain a game, though, going up against this team that is able to pick off people so easily? They know the answer is no. They know that they're reaching a point where if they don't end the game within the next possibly 10 minutes, tops, it's over. They have to go for a big play. They have to go for the dramatic actions, but you don't want to be in that position of having to go for big plays. And as you can see, they've been going for big plays. They've been going for awesome fights, but Karthus kind of reigns on that parade. Karthus has just been shutting them down. You press R as Karthus, you won a team fight, or at least made it an equal trade halfway across the map. And so this is part complaining about Karthus, but really it's TSM's playing it smart. Underrated, they learned a lot from this game. They know that, okay, against newer teams who have not quite experienced, or not quite the same amount of experience with Pantheon, Karthus may not be the best pick against them. But teams like TSM, the flaws of Pantheon are coming out now. They're showing. They know that he just does not have the same level of interaction with the team unless they have someone that can be just as powerful late game. So possibly, maybe a Nunu team like Nunu, Kog'Maw might be equal unless they have some level, some really high degree of just late game power somewhere else on the map. They cannot run Pantheon against someone like Karthus if they know the enemy team will react properly. Like TSM, they've been losing a lot of exchanges, but come out ahead because they can be even. I'm reiterating this a lot, but it's very important to note that in the end, these top two numbers can mean very little sometimes. Sometimes it can mean quite a lot. Sometimes they mean almost nothing, though. I think Curse and CLG at the final or regionals for North America was a good example of this. You'd see Curse keep up with CLG in gold, maybe fall behind 1,000, 2,000, but Curse would take so many towers off the map that eventually, or CLG would take so many towers off the map that Curse would eventually lose one small skirmish, lose an inhibitor, and be in the worst position ever. This is kind of the same case for TSM right now. They can win the one small skirmish, and will get so much out of it. Not because they have good pushing power necessarily, but just because they win one small skirmish. If they have anything up, they can take Baron pretty much. But Underrated, what is their big play? Well, they like Baron. This is something that is very scary. Baron plays are always huge risks unless you're in the best position. The jungler is dead. They have 3 members who are low on health, or you see them go back to base, and it's super safe. You have to be careful with big Baron plays, because when you do make a big Baron play, if the enemy team can exploit certain aspects of it, it can be the worst thing ever. So you can exploit, for example, the very closed-in positioning. This is a small circle. You put a Karthus dead in the middle, he'll hit everybody with Defile in that little pit. You can also exploit a few aspects about Baron. He has a debuff that he applies that reduces attack damage, and very importantly, increases the magic damage you take. I'm not sure the exact number. It's not massive. It's not double magic damage. I think it's about maybe 5 to 10%. But you do take amplified damage. So Underrated, they're looking for an opening now. They're looking for that big play. They've been looking for a lot of openings this game, and when they do find them, they usually come out okay, even to a little bit farther ahead. In this case, the opening is Dyrus' bot lane, and Pounce is being chased actually, which is kind of scary because we saw what happened earlier. But he's actually able to walk away. The ward comes down. Pounce can now teleport to it. Now, let's look on Zingy. Let's see the Baron debuff. Attack damage is being heavily reduced, and he hasn't actually applied the magic damage debuff. So right now, TSM, they're just looking for poke. And look at the position the rate it is. They've essentially been cut off from this Baron pit. To walk out, they have to walk into the wall. They'll take decent chunks of damage from those layways. The poke is just coming in from TSM, and Baron, once he applies that damage debuff, Reginald can walk in there and murder people. So look how this fight goes down. It's in slow motion because it doesn't look that bad for underrated until you realize what's going on. So Reginald is just walking towards the enemy team. They're not necessarily trying to kill people, they're trying to get them low. So Azigi, he's being focused down a bit. Angeloid comes in late, so he's at full HP, but look at all of underrated. They're missing a lot of their HP. Everybody's kind of low, and Reginald is still alive. So if Reggie does die, guess what? The ultimate can come out, and he'll kill, at this point, 2 people. 2 people will die immediately to Reginald's ult. Possibly 3, and possibly even 4 with just a tiny bit of follow-up. So, Reggie goes down, the ultimate gets channeled. They actually kill Pounce before the ultimate lands. It hits, and it takes Sias to almost no HP. It takes Prophet to almost no HP, and Angeloid, same position. And this is just a good team fight taking advantage of Karthus. What did they really do? They did spread out damage to everybody. And that's what they want to do, that's what was okay to do, because in the end, guess what? Everybody's so low, they can be tower dived at a win. Reggie dies, yes, but nobody actually cares. And X Special tries to take down this turret and barely does so. I love that. So now, what happens? TSM takes Baron. Before, they were completely even on gold. Maybe ahead by about 500. Now, after this Baron, they're ahead by, let's see, about 5,000. So, who got the Baron buff? Everybody. At this point, TSM, they kind of do what they want. This is the end of the game, essentially. The game ended with that fight. That was the last stand for underrated. What play can they make now? Now, I don't like to say this, and it does happen sometimes as a caster. It's like, this team is super dead, but we still try to hype it up. That's a secret. We try to keep it exciting, because if we're just like, this team is so screwed, it's not very interesting. But what can they really do? Sometimes you just are in this position where, alright, we hold and we hope they make a huge mistake. Do they make a huge mistake? No. Azumi comes into the side, gets taken so low, kind of like Prof did earlier, and just gets blown up. So they have no Amumu ult, everybody's almost dead. Karthus ult's down, that's nice. But TSM, they don't care. They know they're ahead. Chaos sees the Sona ult get used and just kills everybody. And it's like, well, that's a game. And what could they really do at this point? Nothing. Now the question is, could they do anything? Is there anything underrated could have done to come back from that game? The answer is maybe. So early game, the pressure needed to go onto Karthus, but obviously they built around that. So the Amumu pick did not work out too well because he couldn't gank early. He couldn't do enough early on, and they needed that high pressure. So when you run these super early game compositions, he's very just focused on the now, focused on the early, focused on the right here. Make sure that you have the proper supplement. So either really good late game somewhere else, or a jungler to help you get through that early game, to be very aggressive with those ganks to make sure the enemy is not in a good position to recover if you don't come out ahead. If you don't come out ahead, maybe you'll just die. And this was the case with underrated. They needed someone who wasn't a Amumu, possibly even not Aurelia, possibly Ezreal and Sona were good choices. But Amumu could not gank Karthus. He was just too pushed in. Someone else might have been able to, and that's what they really needed. Might have been able to, but TSM played the situation very well, caught them very off guard. They're a very experienced team. When you give your blue buff to Karthus at level 1, very few teams expect that, and we saw how effective that was. So when you play someone like Pantheon, when you play against a late game character like Karthus, realize you're on a timer. If the game goes on too long, especially if you're even or you're, God forbid, behind, you might just lose the game because there's nothing you can do. Because the other team will just press their buttons. And when Karthus presses R after he's died, the red laser comes above you. You look up. Fuck. You die. And that will happen sometimes. But anyhow, this has been a 2-part series on Pantheon. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Give me feedback on this. Tell me if you liked the 2-part. I liked it, but that's just me. And also, I'll be doing something more with the shorts, making them a little longer, but I will be taking questions. I'll actually put that in the next short. But I will be seeing you guys. This weekend I'm casting TSM Invitational, so see you there. Aside from that, adios, folks.